Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about approaches to programming. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, would a software engineer do everything to solve a problem using an agreed upon approach by the team, even though they themselves didn't like the approach? Well, it depends a little bit on the software team and the software developer, but yes, on average, that's what teamwork is all about. And as a software developer, you kind of have to realize that this thing, which takes some time for you to understand, you don't own the code that you're working on usually. It's not your code, it's the company's code. And usually, like the average company is going to say that, well, if there's one person who wants to do something in a certain way, and then there's 3 or 4 other people in the team who wants to do it another way, if things gets to a point where it's an argument, you usually escalate things until like someone in a decision-making position like comes in and says that, yeah, we should do it this way or that way, and on average it's the majority who wins, unless there is because one thing that I think is very nice in a way about being a software developer is that we have a very organic expert democracy, where, well, the basics of an expert democracy is that the person who has the most informed decision making ability is the person whose vote or voice weighs the heaviest. They're not alone, but they usually are listened to much more than in an absolute democracy, which is like, you have one vote. And I can tell you that it's very rare. I've never really met a software developer who outright defied an approach. I meet a lot of software developers who, they don't read about approaches, they ignore approaches, or etc., etc., or they try to do their own thing, and they consistently, quote unquote, forget to follow practices that are established by the team, or like they do various things, right? There are different flavors. And it really comes down to, in many ways, how important these practices are, and how much of if you have a strong leadership structure, this usually is cured very easily, because if that software developer continues doing that, well, let's just say when they do it in my team, I go very quickly. Quickly is a strong word, but I go very quickly from being very including and forgiving, and there are no mistakes, etc., etc., to talking to them in a more serious manner, stating that either you fall in line or we're going to have a problem. And that's not because I don't want, it's not because you don't want people to be creative. It's more about that they have to understand that they're part of a team, which means that if the team wants to go in a certain way, they follow along, or they find themselves somewhere else to work. Because nothing kills a team dynamic and a leadership structure as quickly as a outlier, lone wolf type of character who thinks he runs the show. That sort of person needs to be killed off immediately or fired, because they're actually very dangerous to keep around, even if they mean well. I've had many long problematic discussions with very opinionated philosopher developers who, like, they won't outright defy you, but they will waste hours and hours and hours of talking, trying to convince you over and over and over. You can tell them how many times you want that, no, we're not doing that, we're doing this, and they're going to be very unhappy with it. It doesn't matter that the rest of the team is not agreeing with them, because they will stand their ground until they are shot down. And this is the problem, right? This is one of the reasons I really hate working in a PC culture, because there is literally a point where you cannot, in a nice way, tell another human being that, no, we're not doing your thing, because they will not understand until you yell at them, say, shut the fuck up and sit down and do your job. They will not. It's the same thing with kids. You can be the nicest, most loving parent in the world, and in some cases, unfortunately, you are at the crossroads, and there is no way to resolve that situation apart from pulling rank. The ideal scenario here is, of course, that you like vote on it or something like that, which you can try it with some of these people, that you create a vote, and then there's resentments and anger, and like that's where the communication skills and like all the personal maturity comes into it. Because as I like to say, the only thing I focus on is the trust and comfort within the team. Because when situations like this, where someone is forced to do something they don't really want, or etc., there has to be a group of people around them which makes them kind of feel that, yeah, but I kind of like working with these guys and they do have a point, etc., so I'll just do it their way, and then maybe we can fix it in the future. You need to be able to resolve the situation without it escalating to the point where people are getting angry at each other, because when things get to that point, your software team is already crippled, because unfortunately, as a software developer, you depend on other team members for everything from code reviews to helping out with issues, and especially if you have juniors in the team, because if you have juniors in the team, they need help like pair programming, etc. So you can't really have anybody in the team who acts in this way, or who would not do this thing. So it's a given that they have to do it. And it's also one of those reasons why I tell people who ask me on comments on the channel and so forth, that when you say just use library A, B, or C, or just do this or do that, I keep telling them, guys, you do not have the luxury of saying, no, I don't know how to do things in this way, I don't know how to do things in that way, I only use this thing because it's clearly superior. That's not your choice to make. If I tell you to write your software in assembly, you write it in assembly if you want to keep the job. That's how it works. You are told in some cases very specifically what to do, and you now have to go and learn it. And that's why I tell people to invest in core skills, get to know the technology and the underlying mechanics of the things that you're doing well enough so that you can actually be a little bit flexible with the stack you're using, or be a little bit flexible with the approaches that you know. Because if you don't know that stuff and you only know how to solve a problem in one way, you're of no use to anybody who needs it to be done in a different way. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, engineers usually try to solve problems that are agreed upon by the team, even if they don't like it themselves. We call it disagree and commit, where you basically realize that there are many ways of solving software problems, and it's sometimes sometimes you're going to be right and the team is going to be wrong, and that's where the soft skills and the diplomacy part of the job comes in. You have to make a good case for the thing that you want, and if people hear that's what I like about it, about software engineering. Usually software developers are working in an expert democracy, and they are very open to listening to very reasonable arguments, and a lot of people are very flexible and so forth. So they might hear you out and might say that, yeah, let's do it your way because you make a lot of sense or something like that. But in some cases they won't, and they will have strong opinions, and then you just have to fold and do it their way. And anything that you do in software development is always that balance between what do you want and what's good for the company, or what everybody else wants, and trying your best to maneuver situations like that and build solutions that feel solid and intuitive to other people, and you're happy with the work that you have produced. These are the things that are usually very important in order to have a well-working software team. Have a great day.